I just want to thank you for the opportunity to allow me to come and speak. I would just be speaking basically as co-chairman of the task force that the legislature put into practice last session, and we met from September through to the end of January. Meeting frequently, we held 2 public hearings that were well attended, one in Fairfield, one in the Legislative Office Building. We heard from many people who had support for the original intent of the bill that was introduced last session to ban the sale of pets, puppies and kittens in pet stores. We also had a lot of people come, employees who worked for the pet stores and the owners of the pet stores. On our task force, I thought we had a fairly balanced amount of people. We had a representative from the Pet Industry Council. We had a representative from the Dr. Goldman from the Veterinarian Association. We had a local breeder on the task force. We had Department of Agriculture Ray Connors. We also had a representative from the Connecticut Humane Society, the ASPCA, and Connecticut Votes for Animals. And I thought we learned quite a bit on both sides of the issue, and I thought we came together with a fairly good compromise. And I'm just going to quickly say that the recommendations that the task force put out are mostly included in the bill, except for some things that I'd like to mention now. We want some language changes on the parts about the USDA violations. We were in agreement, even the pet industry was in agreement, that they wanted to get rid of some of the bad actors that are, in their words, making their industry look bad. So we want some language changes there. There's some things that are not in here. One in particular is this conveyance fee issue. We had a unanimous vote on this, and this would have, and I'll read it, establish a conveyance fee of not less than $5 on the sale of each cat and dog by any pet shop or animal importer required a deposit of such funds to a trust that will go to the Department of Agriculture to help them hire someone part-time to assist with the enforcement of the statutes. What we feel that was a good thing, a $5 conveyance fee, up to $5 conveyance fee, and that would be for animal importers and pet stores who sell animals. And I'm a little disappointed that it's not in there in the new language. I'd like to see it in there. Additionally, one of the things we talked a lot about was the Department of Agriculture said that they had extreme difficulty regulating the current state statutes that we have now on the books. So, for example, we increased the statutory fines on animal importers, and we strengthened those in the last legislative sessions. However, so when someone pops up at, say, a parking lot and sells animals without registering with the state and have a certification, they get fined very heavily. However, when a pet store violates our current state statutes, there is a piece in the statutory language that doesn't allow the Department of Agriculture officer to write a ticket. They can just write a warning. And from the Department of Agriculture's Ray Connor says he's having, his men, his staff, when they go out, they want to write tickets when they are violating the law. If they don't have veterinarian certificates on site for the puppies, if they're not posting the breeder information on the cage so that a consumer can see where an animal came from with the USDA number and the booklet that's supposed to be close by the animals, so that if you're a consumer and you walk in and you see this cute puppy and on the cage it says Yorkshire Terrier, coming from what breeder, what the USDA license number is, you can look here and look it up and see what the health records are for that breeder. That is just a common sense thing to do for a consumer. They should be able to look it up. Now, as I mentioned, during our task force meetings. 2 years ago, I just went and visited all the pet stores in the state of Connecticut just on my own because this issue was something that I cared about. And I have to tell you, the majority of the pet stores were not in compliance with our statutes. They weren't posting these breeder information on the cages. There wasn't any information about where these animals came from. Since the task force began its work, I've received literally nearly 1,000 emails and calls from people across the state who are in support of the original intent of the law, but are in support of something that is going to make a difference in the lives of animals who are living in commercial mills. And I have to tell you, a lot of these people who contacted me, who bought a sick animal, who possibly it died a month later, or they spent, I can't even tell you how many, thousands of dollars. I mean, even a constituent from Representative Hennessy's district, $8,000 on a bloodhound puppy that he brought home. The night he brought it home, it couldn't breathe, and he had to bring it to emergency care. The dog had pneumonia, he had all these illnesses. That dog was sick when he brought it home and has yet to receive $1 in compensation. But he didn't know that he should contact the Department of Agriculture. And I would venture to say to anybody, any of us, ask your friends and family, ask your constituents, do you know that if you buy a sick dog from a pet store, who you call to file a complaint? And I would say to you that 98% of them have no idea that you call the Department of Agriculture. They don't know that. I didn't know it before I was a legislator. I thought agriculture meant farms. So what I'm saying to you is that the recommendations, I think, are a fair compromise. I still do strongly believe that as citizens of this country, that it's our moral responsibility to watch out for these animals who rely on us, that we've bred these domestic animals, that we've bred for our enjoyment, for us to have as companions in our lives, for us to watch over them, to make sure they're not being hurt or abused or being treated inhumanely. And I would love to see a grandfather clause so that we weren't hurting current businesses and that they would be under the new regulations so that we had more accountability and we made sure that they were coming for higher standard commercial mills. But I would like to see a grandfather and no more animals like this being sold because, quite frankly, a commercial breeding facility is not a place that's a good place for an animal. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Representative Kupchick. Senator Meyer.
Representative Kupchick, I'm sorry I missed some of your testimony. I gather you're for grandfathering the current 17 pet stores that do sell commercial puppies, and then going forward, is it your position that we should be banning sale of commercial puppies in those puppy stores?
Well, just to go back, because I know that you missed part of it, I talked about what our recommendations were and how we went through this long process, and some of the language changes, which I'll submit to the committee, should be just to tighten up some of the things that you transferred into your bill. And just one notable thing was the conveyance fee, and I mentioned it before you came back in the room, was that was a unanimously supported recommendation of the committee. So the pet industry and everyone thought that up to $5 conveyance fee paid by importers and pet store owners for every dog they sell or adopt out would go into a fund to the Department of Agriculture that would simply allow them to hire a part-time person. And actually, that was an issue that the Department of Agriculture asked us to include in the recommendations. So that was one thing I really like to push for because I think that will make a huge difference. And I know that a ban on the sale of pets did not come through the bill that the committee raised, and I'm not surprised by that. It's very controversial. However, I thought I'm still asking, or I'm still pleading for a grandfather clause, and that would go back to what you were asking, Senator Meyer. would allow the current pet store owners to operate under the new set of regulations, should they be passed this legislative session, but would stop the practice of selling animals in pet stores after whatever time lapses when those pet stores go out are finished.
Oh,
being in business.
you're selling, you would actually ban pet stores from selling any pets at all?
New pet stores.
They couldn't be shelter or rescue dogs?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Currently, many of the pet stores in Connecticut partner with rescues, and so they do adoption events on the weekend. They don't actually have to take care of the animals. They don't want the responsibility. They don't want to have to house them, feed them, take them outside, vet care. They just partner with rescues, and the rescues show up there on the weekend. People come. If they want a dog, they get it, and then they walk into their pet store and buy products for the animal, and the pet store really gets a win-win. They don't have any of the trouble, and they just get the benefit, really, of partnering. I don't think, I wouldn't want to require any pet store, personally. That was one of the recommendations that didn't pass the task force, was to require pet stores to sell a portion of shelter animals, and I don't think that that's appropriate, because I think people are in rescue for a reason. They love animals and they want to take care of them. If you don't want to take care of a rescue animal, you shouldn't be made to do that.
Thank you. Representative Hennessy, followed by Representative Case.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to thank you, Representative Kupchick, for your tireless advocacy for animals in Connecticut. And just a comment that I've always had pets, and they've always been rescues or private. You know, I know the family that's got the dogs or whatever. I just can't see going to a pet store and buying a pet off the shelf when there are just so many animals that need homes. So just throw that out there. Thank you.
Representative Case.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Kupchick. I appreciate you bringing the issue forward and filling up my email box. It's a great cause, a great thing that's going on. My question for you is, how many animals, or how many dogs and cats are actually bought on a yearly basis in the state of Connecticut? Do we know that from pet stores?
From the information we received through the task force, it was about 7,000 puppies are sold through Connecticut pet stores, and I believe the average would be about 4% of the total pet population in Connecticut. So there was arguments made during the task force meeting that people would have no where to go to get a puppy if eventually we grandfathered it out or banned them. And there are a lot of local breeders. It was brought up during the task force by someone who testified that there was somewhere of 121 local breeders within a 100-mile radius of Connecticut that bred all kinds of dogs. So I think there's sort of like a little hysteria being played, or propaganda, that if pet stores closed, nobody could ever get a purebred puppy again, which I don't believe that's true. There's plenty of people who breed animals that you can get a puppy. It might be a little harder than just walking into a pet store. As one veterinarian who testified before the committee said that she felt that puppies shouldn't be as easy to get as Clark bars. You shouldn't be able to just walk in and pick one up and take it home. You should put a little time into the effort of choosing an animal that's going to be in your home for probably 15 or more years.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that. Personally, purchasing my dog, I did the homework with it and, purchased it from a breeder. Had to travel quite a ways to get it. But just a few more questions for you. We have a registry of these dogs in most municipalities. Most people register them, and they need to be registered. Not asking municipalities to do more work, but is there a questionnaire on that registry that tells us where that dog was purchased?
Do you mean from a pet store?
Well, if you go to your town hall and you register your dog.
License it.
License it.
Okay.
Is there a question on there that says so we can gather better information on where these dogs, cats are coming from?
You know, I really don't know. I'm not sure if they ask you where you got your dog from. I think they just ask breed and age and if
Right.
they're vaccinated.
I didn't know if that would help us in research and finding out where people are getting their animals from. Might be something we can chat about off. But once again, I appreciate you for bringing this to the forefront and your hard and diligent work and what you're doing for the humane animals in the state of Connecticut. I mean, dogs are part of our families, and they need to be healthy, and you're doing the right thing. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative Case.
Representative Pelcito.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative. 7,000 pets sold in 17 stores. That's just a little under 500 per store. That 7,000, that's a lot of dogs and cats being sold. So that's a good amount of business that I'm anticipating them losing because of your bill. My question is, where are we going to go to get the dogs if we don't go to the pet store?
Okay, I just would like to mention, Representative, the bill that your committee raised does not have that language in it. There's no banning of the sale of any pets.
No.
The recommendations tighten up the consumer protection of the puppies, of the animals, where they come from. The grandfather clause that I support would allow those pet stores to continue to sell those puppies, although under far greater regulation that would say they couldn't purchase from commercial mills that have direct violations and some indirect violations. And I believe the puppy purchasing public would want a puppy from a clean, health, USDA record mill as opposed to one that has USDA violations. So, but if there were eventually, say, in 25 years or whatever, no more pet stores, I would imagine they would do what I do or what a lot of people I know do. They go online or they call and they learn about a breeder and they go visit that breeder's home and they see where the dog is being raised and they get to see that it's clean and nice and they purchase that purebred dog, or they, like myself, got purebred dogs through a rescue when they were 4 months old.
Right, I understand that, but there's a question in my mind as to if we eliminate those stores, which we're putting all this control on now, where they're getting the dogs, how many litters they're having, we're leaving it out there to anybody. And how are we going to regulate them? You know,
Right.
the individuals who are mass producing puppies. And that has to happen, because if it's that lucrative a business, and now I'm looking in the paper and I'm seeing dogs for $500, inexpensive, $1,200, $1,500, $2,000 for some dogs. Those are private breeders. How do you know they're not being bred consistently every year? In Pennsylvania, they have a law that says that you can only breed a dog, I think it's once every year or once every 2 years. I know that because I happen to have bought a couple of dogs down in Pennsylvania, which was from a breeder that was well listed, well recommended, and one of the puppies died within a year and a half of our purchasing with cancer. And I didn't think that was, we had no recourse at all. And right now, if you buy a puppy from a store, and if we put the right controls on those stores and regulations, if I had purchased that dog from a local store, I could have gone back to that store. So that's what my question was to begin with. Where are we going to go when we're buying them from just a private breeder? No place. You're creating, like, not only 17 stores that we have in the state, we're going to have maybe 1,000 stores by people just going into breeding dogs. We're going to have more dogs than we're going to have people in the state.
Are you suggesting people are going to start breeding dogs at an alarming rate?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because there are no regulations on them, none whatsoever. Maybe your bill should include people who have dogs that they're breeding, because they have to be controlled. They should have the same controls on them that you're putting onto the stores.
Actually, in our recommendations, I don't know if you, did you read the bill, Representative, that the
This is
environment?
the first I've seen this.
Okay, well, if you read the bill, you would see that it was putting parity, and it would also put controls over local breeders in the state of Connecticut. And that if you read the first section of it, that
Right.
whole part there talks about that part of it, the local breeders and their regulations. And yes, I do believe that I've been, like I said, been working on this issue for a number of years. And I have been contacted by a lot of people who had sick animals from pet stores, went back to that pet store and got nothing. Nothing. Zero. So it is not a guarantee that if you buy a puppy from a pet store, that they are going to give you something in return for your sick puppy. Not any money. And that's why we include in these, in the recommendations from the task force, which were transcribed into the bill that your committee raised, that would hold more accountability for an animal, selling an animal. So, for example, you bring an animal home and the first 20 days you have it, it comes down with a serious illness that could potentially cost you thousands of dollars in x-rays and medicine and blood work and whatever else, that the pet store has to pay some of that. They are responsible to pay some of that. And that's an accountability factor. And they would also have to pay fines, just like animal importers have to pay. So, for example, if I come into the state of Connecticut and I am a rescue, and I have 20 dogs with me that I've rescued from the South, and I open up an adoption day at some parking lot, I have to register with the state of Connecticut. I have to provide the health certificates for all of those animals, that they've been vet checked, that they have their vaccinations, and that they are healthy, with the state of Connecticut Department of Agriculture. And I have to do all of those things. And if I don't do them, I have to pay a $500 fine to the Department of Agriculture for each and every animal that I did not register with them. We are asking in this new language that the pet stores be held to the same standard.
Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work in doing that. I just want to say that the dog that died on us, one of the sister of the other dog that we had, that bill was over $3,000.
What kind of dog was it?
It was a yellow lab and golden retriever mix.
I'm very sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's. I just don't want to see people go through that, because that probably was the breeder's fault, because they might have been overbreeding the dog. And it was on a beautiful farm in Pennsylvania that we went down to pick up the 2 dogs. But they are family.
Animals get sick. And I'm not saying that any animal that you don't purchase from a pet store is never going to get sick. We know that that's not true. I mean, animals get sick.
Yeah.
But they shouldn't get sick the first month you have it. And if they do, I think there should be some accountability across the board.
I agree. It's not just that. I just would not like to see a boom in the dog breeding business happen here in Connecticut without some controls on it. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Kupchick.
Thank you for the time. I appreciate it.